Hey, this is Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the other great podcasts on the network at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, a man for whom getting stuck in traffic was the only thing worse than sticking around for day one of nationals, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear, where we counter the media's negative image of gun culture by introducing you to the amazing men and women who are involved in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. We're focusing on people, not politics. The everyday people from all walks of life, men and women who volunteer their time and effort, who spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. They're your doctors, they clean your teeth, they're fixing your houses, taking care of your pets, they fix your computers and pilot your planes, and they protect our streets and our nation. They are gun culture at its finest, and it's misunderstood or completely unknown to the mainstream media. Today, I'm going to introduce you to another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. I found my friends Dave and Reagan Williams at Salina Gun Shop when I needed an FFL transfer for a firearm. Several years ago, they were just a tabletop FFL. Well, since that time, they have grown into a one-stop shop for guns, ammo, accessories, gunsmithing, custom engraving, and they are a certified Cerakote applicator. Whether it's a custom build, engraving, or Cerakote, no matter how mild or how wild you want your firearm, no matter what you need, they can handle it. Now, I've taken them older guns that have bad and scratched up finishes. Salina Gun Shop made them look like new. When my wife wanted her own Glock 19, I had Salina Gun Shop Cerakote the frame to just the right color that she wanted. I've had them install new sights on my guns, do repairs and trigger work on my revolvers. I trust them with my guns, and you can too. I cannot recommend them highly enough. Check them out today at salinagunshop.com. That's CELINA gunshop.com. Look for a link in the show notes to get to their website. Or if you're here in North Texas, stop by and visit them in person at 701 North Preston Road, Suite 310 in Salina, Texas. salinagunshop.com. Small town store, big town service. salinagunshop.com. Our special guest today is Jeff Herbert from Minden, Nevada. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lloyd. I'm happy to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us what you do for a living there in Minden.
I'm rapidly approaching the mid-40s. I got involved in IDPA back when I used to live in San Antonio about 10, 12 years ago, I think, is when I first got involved in IDPA. So I've been shooting that and a couple other disciplines since. Out here in Minden, I actually am the general manager for High Desert Guns. I'm going to actually be taking full ownership of that shortly.
Nice.
And also, I own and operate Battleborn holsters, specializing in Kydex retention systems. And then I'm also an NRA certified personal protection instructor, inside the home, outside the home, basic pistol, NRA certified RSO, and Nevada State certified concealed carry weapons instructor as well. So between the retail side, manufacturing and selling holsters, and training others the proper means of which to defend themselves and exercise their Second Amendment rights, I stay pretty busy.
It sounds like it. You're wearing lots of hats.
Trying to.
All right. Native of Nevada, or you were in San Antonio for a while, but I couldn't figure out from your profile whether you're a Texas native or a Nevada native.
Actually, neither.
Or neither.
The 10 years I was in Texas, most of my friends said I was more Texan than most of the Texans that were out there. Don't get mad at me. It was meant as a compliment. I'm actually originally from California. Grew up on the West Coast. Like I said, I wasn't from Texas, but I got there as soon as I could. Joined the Marine Corps at 21 years old and left the state at that time after boot camp, and then I've never really been back since, other than to to visit friends or family.
Gotcha.
Just, I don't really align with a lot of what's going on over there. So I chose to find places to rest my hat that are more conducive to my lifestyle.
Exactly. Well, thank you for your service, by the way. You spent 10 years in the Marines?
Yes, sir.
What was the motivation to join the Corps?
At that time in my life, it was a little bit of a dark spot, and it was kind of one of those, I'm either going to get in a lot of trouble or something even worse might happen. Had to make a change. I was originally considering going into law enforcement. I was talking to a buddy of mine that I was going to flight school with. He was a former Marine, and talking to him about different options, and he convinced me to go talk to the local recruiter, and the rest was history.
Did your interest in guns, did that start prior to the Marine Corps, or was the Marines your introduction to guns?
It was actually prior to the Marine Corps. The house I grew up in, it's not exactly it was gun averse. It was just, we were in a small town, not a lot of crime, not a lot of hunting where I grew up. So I just never really grew up around guns, but I was always fascinated with the military, always a big fan since I was as long as I could remember. And I recall my dad getting a handgun when I think I was about 16 or 17. My mom got it for him for Christmas one year because some of his buddies were getting involved in target shooting and stuff. And then on my 18th birthday, I went and bought my first long gun. And on my 21st birthday, I bought my first handgun, and just went from there.
The rest is history.
Yes, sir.
So how did you hear about competitive shooting? How did you get involved in competitive shooting?
So when I was living in San Antonio, I began working for a shop called the Powderhorn in kind of Southwest San Antonio. And some of the customers that were coming in there were talking about it. And, of course, you had your IDPA shooters, your USPSA shooters, IPSC, all the different disciplines coming in. And so I was picking the brains of various people and decided that, from back being on the tactical side of the Marine Corps, I kind of miss, the running and gunning aspect of things. So I started looking into 3-gun initially. And the very first match I ever shot was a 3-gun match with Texas Tactical and Iron Mike Webb out there, and Wolf and those guys. And I really, really enjoyed it. But my carbine was pretty solid from years of carrying one in the military. But my pistol was pretty weak. I was not happy with my accuracy on the pistol side. So I started talking to a couple of the guys that were at the match. A couple of the guys suggested IDPA is more of a, I wanted to do some more scenario-based things instead of just basically a shooting obstacle course.
Right.
So started researching IDPA, and then started going out to the local matches there with Texas Tactical. And I really, really enjoyed how Mike ran his matches. Everything was, real world scenario. This is the situation. React how you would, and then they go over the stage plan and how you're going to engage it. And I felt very comfortable with that. And it more so than, I shot a couple USPSA matches. I'm not going to mention the club or the people that I shot with out there, but it was just kind of a turn off for me. The way some of these guys were acting and complaining and things like that. Not to say that's, across the board, it was just that particular club.
Nobody ever complains in IDPA.
No, not at all. But it was, I witnessed people deliberately running into ROs to get a reshoot and things like that on the USPSA side. And I was like, you know what, guys getting in heated arguments over a half a second. And the Texas Tactical Club was nothing like that. Everybody really got along and were there for the sport and really enjoyed what they were doing. And it was less gaming, I guess is one way to put it. And so I stuck with IDPA and kept shooting and, started progressing and getting better. And, just that's really where I found myself to be most comfortable in the different disciplines that I've tried.
What was that first local match like for you? What experience had you had going into that aside from your military experience? What had you done to prepare, and how did your preparation?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah, it was very eye-opening because, when people say, if you want to learn how to shoot under stress, get yourself a shot time. I stepped to that first line and thought like, man, I've been in combat. I've had rounds coming at me. I've put rounds down range. Nothing can compare to that. I should be able to knock this out of the park, and then shooter ready, stand by. And that first beep hit, and it was like deer in headlights. I was standing there kind of like looking around frantically, and then my draw was crap, and I completely missed the first target at like 7 yards. And it just, it was an absolute dumpster fire. And so, then after the fact, and that's one thing I really enjoyed shooting with that club is when you have an experience like that, you'll have 2 or 3 guys that'll pull you aside and say, hey man, next time, when you're at home, here's some dry fire drills you can work on. Hey, here's some tips that have helped me progress throughout the year. So it was more of a community type feeling to that match where everybody's willing to help you improve and give you pointers. They're not looking at you as competition. They're looking at you as a fellow shooter.
Right.
But, I made the mistake of just absolutely, I think part of it was because I didn't know what to prepare for. So it was just kind of like what we used to say kind of when we were overseas and have to go do a quick mission with no proper mission planning was just, F it, we'll do it live. And that's kind of was my mindset going into the match. And I didn't place dead last. I think I beat out 2 other people out of maybe 48 shooters. So I can hang my hat on the fact that, I definitely wasn't first, but I sure as heck was not last.
Right. Didn't get DQ'd and didn't come in last.
And that's the big one. No DQ. I know so many people that have unfortunately might have a DQ on the first match, but no, I was pretty fortunate to make it all the way through and a little egg on my face throughout the day. But other than that, it was a lot of fun.
Yep.
A lot of fun. I was just hooked. That was it.
How long after that before you decided, hey, I'm going to get out there with the guys with the NASCAR jerseys on and shoot a sanctioned match?
I would say my first sanctioned match was in 2013. Was the Coastal Bend Challenge in Corpus Christi.
Oh, okay.
That was my first actual sanctioned match, and I want to say I'd been shooting for maybe a year to a year and a half.
Okay.
Went out and shot that match and ended up taking home some hardware. So I was pretty proud of that. Took second for SSP Marksman.
Nice.
So I was very pleasantly surprised. I didn't think I shot all that well. I had a couple of stages I'd like to have a few shots back, but who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
So it was a great experience, and unfortunately, haven't really, especially with where we're at here, we don't have a lot of higher echelon match support out here in Northern Nevada. There's a pretty decent club set down in Las Vegas area.
Mm-hmm.
That's an 8-hour drive from here. I'm right on the California border, so there's a couple of clubs over near Sacramento,
yep.
Northern California, that I'm going to look into. Because the local club that we have here, and they're out of Carson City, it's a lot of fun, but it's not as challenging as what I'm used to, going from somewhere where, Iron Mike, who's been a, match director for nationals on more than one occasion. And that's how he runs those local matches. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I got accustomed to. And I think I got spoiled a little bit and got out here, and it's not quite at the level that I'd like it to be at. So I have kind of dipped my toe into some other disciplines just to kind of give myself a little bit more heated competition and some more challenging stages to challenge myself.
Right.
So I'm looking at hopefully this next year, because I was out of IDPA for a little bit with, moving halfway across the country,
right.
and various jobs and things like that. Had to work weekends a lot and things of that nature. So now that I'm at a point where I can set my own schedule, and I've got a couple buddies out here too that I got involved in IDPA. So we're looking at, doing some road trips and trying to shoot some higher tiered matches, because my goal for next year is nationals. I would love to qualify for nationals for next year. That's my goal. That's what I'm aiming towards. So I'm really focused on trying to shoot as much as I can and improve and, see how badly I can get beat by the big guys.
Yep. During that time that between your first introduction to IDPA and going to that first sanction match and actually bringing home a trophy, what did you do during that time in that almost a year to prepare? What was preparation like, and how did you approach improvement? Dry fire.
It's at the point where, I'm standing on the corner with a cardboard sign saying, we'll work for ammo. That's unfortunately the hardest part is I'd love to be able to, I live a quarter mile from BLM land, which out here in Nevada is basically, you can go shoot all you want. So I don't have to worry about trying to, schedule range time or anything like that. The hard part though is feeding the beast.
Right.
You want to go out and, I'll take 100 rounds. That'll be, and then 20 minutes later, you're looking around going, that's it. It took longer to set up my targets than it did to actually do any scenario-based training. So what I did in Texas was a lot of dry fire, a lot of reload drills, working on the mechanics and really getting that muscle memory down, really getting that sight picture, sight alignment down. And then with those repetitions, of course, comes speed. So I was always focused more so on my hits than I was my speed. When I, went into a couple of the other sanctioned matches that focused more on speed, I found myself at a disadvantage because my movement throughout the stage, when I'm moving from P1 to P2, I was not in a dead sprint. I would be in a low crouch, as a more tactical movement.
Right.
So I had to kind of, that's what I knew. It was 10 years of that. So what I had to do was kind of retrain the brain and get into the going from P1 to P2, P2 to P3 is getting there as fast as possible in order to engage those targets. And, taking the gas pedal off from the initial draw to that first round on T1. I always tried to rush that first shot and ended up not being very accurate, but my follow-up shots were always accurate. So it was more of a kind of tweaking my game, figuring out where those weaknesses were, and in that dry fire training, just continuously working towards that.
Now, what you said that you were pleasantly surprised by the outcome at that first sanctioned match. What do you remember of that day and how things went, and what was it about that day that was so surprising that you finished second in your division? Well,
first off, the day started really early. We had to drive from San Antonio to Corpus Christi, and match sign-in was at, if I remember right, it was, I think 7 or 7:30. So, it's a 2 to 2.5 hour drive. So we were on the road pretty early that morning. Didn't get much sleep, of course, because you got the pre-match jitters, the first sanctioned match. And so it was an early morning. It was an 8-stage match. I do remember that. And it was kind of a free for all. It wasn't like you started at stage 1, then went to stage 2 and went to stage 3. It was, you could bounce around all over the place just as long as by the end of the day you had, all the stages run. So that was a little different for me, coming from only shooting local matches where everything is a little bit more regimented as far as that goes. So that was kind of an interesting time. And then I think the thing that stood out for me most was, I recall on one stage we were shooting at 25 yards from the prone through a barrel, and that I had never engaged targets at that distance with a handgun. At least in a competition setting, it had always been 10, 15 yards, things here and there. So actually, I would say it was closer to, it was beyond 25. It was whatever at that time that IDPA said is the farthest distance
right.
you place the target was where these things were. And there was 3 of them. And I remembered, I think out of the 3, I only had 1 or 2 hits that were on cardboard, and then just a few other stages where I completely blew a shot or just was going too fast. And because of the speed, I was, pulling for a -1 or a -3, and just some mental mistakes. Footwork wasn't all that great. There were times where I'd go to move from position 2 to position 3, but I didn't engage T4 and I had to go back to position 2 to re-engage, and, a few mental errors like that. And I just thought man, at the end of the day, if I finish in the middle of the pack, I'll be happy.
Right.
So, I, again, got through a match without a DQ. So was happy there for the first sanction match. But it was that, the way I look at it is I'm not out there competing against anybody else. I'm out there competing against myself. I'm out there to train. I'm out there to get better. And as long as I'm not the worst shooter out there, then I'm good to go. If I can at least hold my own against, and some of these guys, that's all they do. They're out there, they're training, they're shooting constantly. So, if I can hold my own, I'm okay. So to have my fingers crossed for middle of the pack and then to actually come home with hardware, it was humbling for one, and just I was pretty ecstatic to be able to have something in my hand when I went back.
Nice. Have you competed in any sanctioned matches since then, or have you been kind of limited to just what's available locally?
I've been limited to what's available, primarily, within a year after the Coastal Bend Challenge, I had is when I moved out here to Nevada. I moved out here in 2014, and I probably didn't shoot matches out here for the first 2.5, 3 years. It was a lot of, like I said, a lot of working on the weekends. The first, major job that I had when I got here was just ate up a lot of time. It was a lot of travel. And I didn't have a lot of time with my family because I was working so much. So the time that I wasn't at work, I tried to be at home.
Right.
And then for a long time, I couldn't even find a club out here. And I don't know if it's a matter of I wasn't digging hard enough or what the case was, because there's actually two clubs out here. There's Northern Nevada IDPA and then Western Nevada Pistol League. So after doing some digging, doing some research, I was able to find the Northern Nevada IDPA is a lot closer to me. Western Nevada Pistol League is about an 1.5-hour drive from where I'm at to the range facility.
Okay.
Whereas Carson City range is 20 minutes.
Right.
So it was just something that I found them. They're a little bit closer, and like I said, it's more not no rule Nazis or anything out there. There's very laid back. It's kind of a run what you brung kind of thing. There's guys out there running IPSC setups and stuff like that, and nobody really harps on it because they just want to make sure everybody's safe and having a good time. But I'm really trying to focus on getting a little more stringent on the rule set and, challenging myself. So when the time comes, hopefully here pretty soon, I can hit a couple of those tiered matches to put myself in a better position competitive wise.
Gotcha. What would you say, how does IDPA, you talked about how you were, part of what you do is firearms instruction. How does IDPA play into that? Do you bring anything that you learn from IDPA into what you teach, or is your experience as an instructor informing more is it going the other way where your experience as an instructor is in kind of affecting how you shoot IDPA?
It's actually, and it depends on the class I'm teaching. There's several different, courses that I offer, but I would say in my defensive pistol class, there is quite a bit of IDPA that I bring into that class, which, I think being someone who has been on a two-way range and who is an instructor, but also competes, works in the gun world. And I've got my fingers in one way, shape or form in anything firearm related in the industry. So it gives me kind of at least I would consider a unique perspective that maybe there's some guys that all they do is compete, or some guys that all they do is hunt, or all they do is, go and get their concealed carry permit, shoot their qualification, and then never put another round through the handgun again. So in my defensive pistol, I use a shot timer for a little bit of induced stress. I force them to move positions. A lot of the side picture, side alignment, your reloads, working within your workspace, cover versus concealment, making my students engage targets from behind cover, shooting around cover,
right?
Things like that, utilizing a concealment garment, because if it is a defensive pistol class, that means you are going to be carrying concealed. So you have to be able to get that garment out of the way and get that gun into the fight as fast as possible.
Right.
So, those are the type of things that I kind of took from IDPA and moved that over into the teaching aspect. And, it's been beneficial.
Very good. What's something that when you first started shooting IDPA that you did that you've learned different about, or that you don't do anymore? You've changed the way you do it.
My reloads. I can say right off the bat that the way I conduct my reloads is a little bit different, because for one, on the military side, you would pretty much, when you brought the pistol into the workspace for that reload, you were dang near straight up and down with that muzzle.
Right.
And of course, IDPA, we can't break that 180. So I had to kind of reteach myself on my reloads. And one thing that going from a static range to something with more movement, like an IDPA match, is where your mags drop when you're conducting your reloads. So if you're on a static range and you're just bang, 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 and then you hit that mag release and the mag drops straight down. Well, if you're on the move and that mag drops straight down, depending on the surface you're on, you take one step, you step on that magazine and, you're doing the splits.
Right.
So,
right.
How I conduct my reload, a little bit of a wrist flip when as I'm hitting the mag release, as I'm bringing the pistol in the workspace to kick that magazine away into the left that's out of my path of travel. That's one thing. And then just working on my draw stroke, is something where just because you clear a Kydex doesn't mean, you're going to be able to get the gun in the fight right away. Where some people, what I call, they either fly fishing where they like to bring the muzzle up and then settle.
Right.
They're the bowlers. Low and bring it up.
Right.
So doing a nice, clean, concise draw that you can get the gun in the fight fast is another thing that I would say that I really had to work on and kind of reteach myself from what I was taught in the military. And
Gotcha.
Then, of course, as an instructor, you try to implement as much of that experience as you can into all those different facets that you're teaching.
Okay. What would you say, which part of your game is your strong point, and what part of your game at this point still needs the most improvement?
My misses are my strong point. I have a lot. No, I was going to say my strong point, my weak point are the same thing. I would say my strong point right now are my split times. The last 2 matches I've shot, I've had a few guys come up and just be like, wow, you run that gun really well. And, it's a huge compliment for me to have somebody actually compliment your gun handling in your times. Unfortunately, with those split times, I tend to get a little bit complacent. And my weak point is I try to shoot against the clock. I'm more worried about getting through the stage fast, more so than accurate. And I know dang well that you get more points with your accuracy than you do with your speed. So my last 2 matches, I've made it a conscious point to try to take the gas pedal off a little bit on the speed and my transitions, from target to target, and emphasize more on my sight picture and my hits.
Gotcha.
So, trying to find that balance between fast and accurate.
Right.
I think a lot of us, run into that same problem, unless our name is Jerry Mikulik. Then
right. Unless you're Steve Anderson or
exactly.
All right. Well, so what is it about IDPA that you love so much? This is a question that we always end the show with, and the answers generally are very similar. What is it but I always like to hear it, because there are lots of other sports you could be participating in. And I know you do shoot other sports, mainly because you don't have a whole lot of choices, but what is it that keeps you shooting IDPA that makes this sport so much fun and that you love so much? For
me, it's the camaraderie and the support. Like I said, with other disciplines, it seems like everybody's just out against one another. Whereas the guys on your squad are viewed as competitions, not as fellow shooters. And, I can't say this for all IDPA clubs, but I can say in the few clubs that I have shot with over the last several years, going on 12, 15 years, something like that it's been the camaraderie and the support. Everybody on your squad, if you have a good run, everybody's saying, hey man, great run. Hey, great shooting. Hey, that was awesome. If you have a bad run, you have 2 or 3 guys that are right there to give you some pointers and say, hey, this is how I would run it. Or careful when you come around that corner, you almost broke the 180 here. Or it's a very supportive community. And that's one thing that I really like about IDPA is it's a little bit more, for lack of a better term, it's less corporate than some of the other, disciplines that are out there. And there's just a more of that brotherhood feeling of the people that you shoot with. And, the people don't look down on you because you're running a particular type of pistol, or you're running a particular type of holster, or, if you're, you don't have to show up with $5,000 worth of kit in order to compete. And I think that's another big thing as well, is you can shoot IDPA with dang near anything that's in your safe. You don't have to go spend $4,000 on a Terran Tactical Combat Master to be competitive.
Right.
And you can shoot a standard stock Glock 19 out of the box, and if you know how to run your gun, you can be competitive. And that's one thing that I really like about IDPA is everybody has a chance.
Yep, definitely. All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for. Thank you again for your service. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I really do appreciate it. It's great to get a chance to chat with you, and I hope you manage to get out of Nevada some, and we get a chance to run across one another on the range.
I hope so too. I'm hoping in the next couple of years I can get out to San Antonio at least once a year to go shoot out there, and it's always on those bigger tiered matches that you get a chance to see some of the guys you only get to see once or twice a year.
Yep. Well, thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Lloyd. Appreciate the time.
All right. That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.